The United States has the most powerful military in human history. Its defense budget exceeds the next 10 countries combined. And yet, America keeps walking away from wars without actually winning them. Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. 20 years in Afghanistan, $2 trillion spent, and the Taliban are back in power. The United States toppled Saddam Hussein in 3 weeks, then fought an insurgency for nearly a decade, only to watch ISIS rise from the chaos it left behind. This isn't bad luck or incompetence. There's a structural pattern here, forces built into how America fights wars that almost guarantee conflicts will be left unfinished. This video explains why the most powerful military on Earth consistently fails to achieve lasting political victories, and why this pattern will likely continue unless something fundamental changes. The story begins with limited war doctrine. Since nuclear weapons emerged, American warfare has fundamentally changed. During World War II, the objective was total victory and unconditional surrender. But once both superpowers had nuclear arsenals, all-out warfare became existentially dangerous. American strategy shifted toward limited war, conflicts constrained politically and militarily to avoid escalation with other great powers. The problem is that limited objectives often lack the clarity and commitment needed to actually resolve conflicts. The nation fights with one hand tied behind its back, trying to satisfy vague political goals without committing resources necessary for lasting success. When aims are limited and strategies that might risk broader escalation are avoided, a fundamental mismatch gets created between tactical military success and strategic political settlement. Every battle can be won and the war still lost, because destroying enemy forces doesn't automatically create stable governance. Consider Vietnam. American forces won virtually every major engagement. The Viet Cong were devastated during the Tet Offensive. But none of that mattered because the underlying political objective was never clear. The limited nature of the commitment meant the country was never willing to do what total victory would have required. So a grinding war of attrition was fought that could never be finished.
Democracies are terrible at fighting long wars. Political leaders face constant pressure from public opinion, elections, media coverage, and fiscal constraints. When soldiers come home in body bags and wars drag on for years with no visible progress, public support collapses. Politicians respond to that pressure because they face voters. Wars often start with broad support, but as casualties mount and objectives blur, that support evaporates. Politicians then face an impossible choice: commit more resources and risk political suicide, or start planning for exit even if conditions don't justify it. This pattern played out in Afghanistan. Multiple presidents inherited a war they didn't start, knew it wasn't going well, but couldn't politically afford to be the one who lost Afghanistan. So they'd surge troops, declare progress, then draw down. The result was 20 years of strategy driven by domestic political imperatives rather than ground conditions. The American public isn't pacifist, but it's impatient. Quick victories and clear results are desired. When wars turn into long occupations with ambiguous objectives, political will collapses. Once that happens, military strategy becomes irrelevant. Sustained military occupations are extraordinarily expensive. The Iraq and Afghanistan wars cost over $6 trillion when long-term veteran care is included. The economic and political pressure to limit these costs creates constant tension with military objectives. Commanders ask for more troops and time. Politicians say no because the price is too high. The result is half measures, surges followed by drawdowns, strategies based on wishful thinking rather than reality.
Modern warfare complexity adds another layer. America has overwhelming conventional military superiority. In traditional state versus state war, the country is virtually unbeatable. But most American wars since World War II have been counterinsurgencies and nation-building operations, fights against enemies who don't wear uniforms. In that kind of warfare, conventional superiority matters much less. Insurgents don't need to defeat the American military, they just need to survive long enough for the United States to give up and go home. They exploit local grievances, hide among civilians, and use improvised tactics. American forces excel at destroying enemy armies and seizing territory, but counterinsurgency requires building things, not breaking them. It requires political legitimacy, effective governance, and economic development. These are things military force cannot accomplish alone. U.S. military campaigns are planned around achievable military tasks rather than coherent political end states. The focus goes to metrics that can be measured, like body counts and territory controlled, but none of that translates into the political settlement necessary necessary to end conflict. Bureaucratic dysfunction makes this worse. The Pentagon, State Department, and aid agencies have different priorities and timelines. The result is strategic confusion and mission creep. In Iraq, the army was disbanded and the government purged, creating instant insurgency. In Afghanistan, partnerships formed with corrupt warlords undermined everything being built. The Afghan government had no legitimacy outside Kabul, yet the pretense continued that, with more time, a stable democratic state could be created.
The pattern is clear. America enters conflicts with limited objectives constrained by nuclear-age caution. Domestic politics create pressure for quick results and eventual exit. Asymmetric warfare means military superiority doesn't produce political victory. Bureaucratic dysfunction undermines strategy. Cost considerations limit commitment. The result is a graveyard of unfinished wars. These wars create permanent low-intensity conflicts that simmer for decades. They erode governance, create safe havens for extremists, generate refugee flows, and breed resentment, fueling the next generation of conflicts. The Iraq War destabilized the Middle East and gave birth to ISIS. The Afghan War created humanitarian catastrophe. Libya became a failed state. Each intervention creates conditions for future interventions, but the lesson is never learned. The structural factors producing unfinished wars are built into the American political system, into modern warfare, into the nuclear age. Until something fundamental shifts in how America thinks about military force, the same mistakes will keep being made. Conflicts will be entered with optimistic assumptions. Public support will erode. Costs will mount. Withdrawal will happen having achieved far less than promised. The cycle continues. Some argue for clearer, achievable objectives. Others say better integration of military and political strategy is needed. Some say intervention should be avoided unless resources for lasting success will be committed. But until America confronts these structural factors, the nation is condemned to repeat this pattern. More interventions, more treasure spent, more lives lost, and more conflicts left unfinished.